Hassan Rouhani's election as president of Iran has brought in much needed hope to the Islamic Republic and the world. And to discuss issues related to Iran's relations with the US and the world, we have with us Professor Flint Leverett, who is the author of Going to Tehran and is currently at the Pennsylvania State University. And also to discuss the visit of the US Secretary of State John Kerry to India, we have with us Professor Stephen Cohen, well-known author, South Asia expert, and currently at Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. Hello and welcome to another episode of Latitude. I'm Maruf Raza. The election of Hassan Rouhani as president of Iran has filled Iran and the world with a certain degree of cautious optimism as Mr. Rouhani makes all the right noises and the US expresses a desire to talk to Iran.
After years of deadlock and dispute with the West, Iran elected a moderate cleric as its president. Called the diplomat sheikh in Iran, Hassan Rouhani is viewed as the man who will rebuild the bridges with America.
انشاءالله این حرکت آغازی خواهد بود برای تغییر و تحولی که مورد خواست مردم هست که البته هم تحول در زمینه مسائل اقتصادی خواهد بود و هم در زمینه مسائل فرهنگی و اجتماعی و سیاسی.
He says he will not compromise on Iran's nuclear ambitions, yet isn't wary of extending a hand towards America if it promises not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs. His reform agenda and the moderate approach cutting the ice with US too.
رابطه ایران با آمریکا مسئله پیچیده و دشواری است، مسئله ساده‌ای نیست. به هر حال یک زخم کهنه‌ای وجود داره، باید تدبیر بشه برای اینکه این زخم درمان بشه. البته ما دنبال ادامه تنش یا توسعه تنش نخواهیم بود، دنبال افزایش تنش نخواهیم بود. عقل سلیم هم حکم میکنه که دو ملت و دو کشور بیشتر به فکر آینده باشن، گذشته ها رو بنشینن براش راه حل پیدا کنن، ترمیم کنن، به فکر آینده باشن.
For Obama, who's in search of new allies in Central Asia post the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, engaging Iran may well be useful.
I think it says that the Iranian people want to move in a different direction. And you know, if you contrast this with the violence and suppression that happened in the last presidential election, obviously you have a much more positive atmosphere this time. The Iranian people rebuffed the hardliners and the clerics in the election.
Meanwhile, for India, which had cut down on the imports from Tehran by 42% to pacify America, the relationship with Iran may be considered steady but a little shallow. While India is dependent on Iran for its energy needs, New Delhi is also investing in Iran's Chabahar port for easy access to Afghanistan.
For us, the most important element has been the ability to buy oil for our energy needs. It all depends on how everyone is able to adjust their interests and their policy positions in taking advantage of bringing Iran more fully into all these issues. It should be more closely associated with the end game in Afghanistan.
He's a man who swept the Iran elections with a little over 50% votes. While he overcame challenges from the hardline Khomeini loyalists, the ultimate power lies with Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the nation's supreme leader. He may not walk the path of moderation and not extremism, but considering that the Iranian president doesn't exactly wield the influence to set policies for the Islamic Republic, the question is, will Rouhani be able to deliver?
With the new president of Iran being portrayed as a moderate, The big question is, would that be reason enough for the West and the US in particular to begin dialogue with Iran once again? And to answer all the questions about Iran, we have with us Professor Flint Leverett, who is the author of Going to Tehran, Why the US Must Come to Terms with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Professor Leverett, the US has indicated that it's willing to begin talks with the so-called moderate leader in Iran. But when will the world see a return to relations of the pre-1979 era?
Well, I think that, yes, the United States is willing to talk to Iran, but I think that for progress to be made, it's not just a matter of Iran having a leader who is perceived by the United States as more moderate. The United States and the Obama administration have to be willing to make some very fundamental changes in their approach to Iran. On the nuclear issue in particular, I think it's critical that the United States recognize Iran's legal right as a sovereign state and as a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to enrich uranium under international safeguards. If the United States would accept this basic right that Iran has, I think a nuclear deal could be had very quickly, and Dr. Rouhani, once he's in the presidency, would be a very, very knowledgeable and capable partner for helping to conclude such a deal.
Iran is strategically placed between West, Central, and South Asia. But why is Iran not being able to play a substantially important strategic role in the region?
Well, I think you're right. Iran is very centrally located and is a kind of unavoidable player in a lot of regional contexts. What Americans would call South and Central Asia, in the Persian Gulf, in the Middle East, you really can't get around dealing with Iran. And I think Iran is interested in playing an essentially constructive role in all of these regional settings. The issue for its neighbors, for other countries near Iran, is how much they are willing or unwilling to let the United States determine how far their relations with Iran can go. The United States threatens other countries with so-called secondary sanctions, threatening to punish third country entities here in the United States for perfectly lawful business that they might do with Iran. To a large extent, secondary sanctions are a bluff by the United States. And I think as the United States keeps pushing on these secondary sanctions, countries in West Asia are going to have to decide for themselves, how much they're willing to kind of appease the United States by going along with these, as I said, illegal extraterritorial assertions by the United States. And, at what point are they willing to call the American bluff and pursue relations with Iran based on their own calculations of interest?
India has traditionally had very strong links with Iran, is dependent on Iranian energy, and has supported Iran in most international forums, most recently its presidency in the Conference of Disarmament, when the US, EU, and Canada have backed out and walked out of the conference. So where do you see India-Iran relations going? What is the real bonding adhesive between the two countries?
I think that India and Iran clearly have important interests that overlap. Afghanistan is a very, very good example of that. All during the period in which the Taliban was rising and basically ruling Afghanistan, India and Iran cooperated very extensively to try and manage that common threat. And I think, as we look toward a U.S. drawdown in Afghanistan, India and Iran are going to continue to have very important interests in common in Afghanistan. Central Asia is another area where I think Indian and Iranian interests overlap to a good degree. And of course, there's the whole issue of Iran as an energy supplier to India. Dr. Rouhani, during his service as head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council under both President Rafsanjani and President Khatami, played an important role in the development of Indo-Iranian relations under both of those presidencies. And I suspect he's going to be, once he's inaugurated as president, I suspect he's going to be very interested in developing Iran's relations with India even further.
Thank you, Professor Leverett. I wish more people shared your optimism in the US, where your views still seem to be perhaps in a minority.